That's good. I'm gonna go now.
Faster?
No, leave it like that. Dun, dun. When I'm done, I'll let you know. Deep sleep. Deep sleep. And God caused Adam to go into a deep sleep and took a rib from his side. Some of us don't even know we've been pierced in the side, don't even know we're bleeding on the inside because our wounds are so steep. We're in a deep sleep. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're in a deep sleep. Walking around, living your life, eating and drinking, no need to cry, you're in a deep sleep. There's a rib out your side. Greetings and grand risings. This is life coach and author Freedom Immanuel from the Personal Freedom Center located in Auburn, Washington Territory in the United States of America. Welcome. I'm glad that you are here. I wanted to talk to you today. I wanted to say, as always, that my 5 core pathways to personal freedom at the Personal Freedom Center are spiritual, emotional, religious, physical, and financial freedom. And I believe that all men and women, regardless of their walk in life, need a healthy balance in each one of these 5 core pathways in order to be happy, healthy, and to live a decent functioning life, all right? So you need to be balanced and well balanced in each one of those 5 core pathways. Again, it's spiritual, emotional, religious, physical, and financial freedom. Today we're going to talk about how do you know if you are really freedom? How do you know if you are really free? How do I know if I am really freedom? I don't know. I almost stopped for a minute to think that through. So I believe that the word believe in itself is something that we have clung to for so long, that we don't necessarily examine it, and know what it means, but I want to define it for the purpose of this talk. Okay, so the word believe means something that we believe to be the truth, and in that area or in that subject of conversation that you believe that your point of view is the correct one. Okay, so there is a difference between belief, and there is a difference between belief and then there's another term called knowing, which I talk about in my book, Fart in the Wind. I don't know if you can see it good. This is my first book. You can find it on my website store at viviangale.com. And it has a chapter in here on belief and knowing. So there is a difference between belief and knowing. And how do you know if you are really sovereign? Okay, and I struggled with the name of this video back and forth, from how do you know if you are really sovereign to how do you know if you're being brainwashed, So I want to tell you a little bit about what it says here under the chapter of belief and knowing. I hadn't intended to, but I need to, and I would like to. I have been considering, and I'm changing that statement because we need not do anything. Okay, so we get a choice in everything that we allow in our life, what we do, what we say, what we feel. So when we say need, we should know that we have all that we need. All right, so there is a chapter on beliefs in this book. It starts on page 114, and this book has about over 230 pages. I think about the author starts there, and it has a very good index, so you can look up the words or things that you might be curious about. I'll tell you a little bit about it more one day in a video all by itself. But I wanted to go to the chapter of beliefs quickly. And of course, I forgot what page it's on, so I got to go back to the beginning of the table of contents and look that up. Okay, so again, when you're thinking about whether or not you are really sovereign, and I ask the question because it's not a question that we often ask ourselves, or if you're doing something correct in your processes or incorrect in your processes, it might lead you to ask that question. Okay, so another thing is when you are listening to too many teachers, you're not listening, or you can ask yourself, if you are listening to a lot of teachers on the internet, or taking a lot of classes, you are listening to too many voices. It's almost as if you begin to feel like what is called schizophrenia. Okay, there's too much going on in your mind, and it's really hard to make a decision. Then you'll start mixing processes, and then you'll get to the point where you don't want to do anything all because it all feels like too much. But if you can get to the place where you're in your early stage, right, of learning or just declaring your nationality, whether it be Moorish American nationality or whatever status that you claimed, and be comfortable with that, and knowing that you made a decision to be free and that you made a decision to be sovereign, okay, that's what you should always go back to. Number one, when you feel like you have the question, am I really sovereign? So that is the first part of this talk is, do you know the definition of being sovereign right now without looking it up? I did it for myself, right? And so let me play my own game for a minute. So being sovereign in the sense of this video, it means being self-governed, all right? And that is the definition of sovereign. If you look it up, it might add or take away a little more. We can do that really quick. Definition of sovereignty. Okay, so I'm going to try and stick to this script that I have written down because I don't want to miss anything and I don't want the video to be too long. So sovereignty, the definition here is supreme power or authority. Okay, similar means jurisdiction, supremacy, dominion, power. All those things are associated with being a sovereign, okay? Supreme authority within a territory. So if we are saying that we are sovereign, then the territory, guess where it is? That we are sovereign is over our own kingdom, over our own mental, over our own body, right? And over all that we claim to belong to us, okay? So sovereignty can be defined as the supreme authority. Sovereignty entails a hierarchy within a state. Okay, so if there's a hierarchy, then that hierarchy is in itself considered sovereign. But the people or whatever entities that it is controlling are not considered sovereign, even though they may be, but if they don't know that they are, then they're not going to behave as a sovereign. When I think about sovereignty, I often think about the act in itself being compared to or being similar to baptism, and how when you get baptized, like I did in the church when I was a young girl, I had got baptized and I made a commitment to give my life to God, so to speak, and I got baptized. And as a matter of fact, every time I quote unquote sinned, I got baptized again for a total of 7 times. So 7 is a good number. But then one day I said to myself, you know what, you're just getting wet, So I stopped doing that and made a decision to live and to only do the things that made me, to think things through first, so that I would only do the things, I would only do the things that were true of who I was. So I had to establish for myself morals and values that I would live by, and always question what I was doing, what I was thinking of or contemplating doing by my own set of moral standards, okay? So back to the definition of sovereignty right now would be that me, for instance, creating my own government, my own rules for myself. That was one of my commandments, if so to speak, or one of my agreements that I made with myself. So a sovereign means being self-governed, all right? And so when you make that decision, it comes within yourself, right? So it's having complete and supreme power and authority over oneself, okay? Being first and foremost sovereign, again, starts within your own mind, okay? For some of us, it comes naturally. We are born with that instinct and will always resist no matter, all manner of control. I think that I got the document open twice, so ignore that one in the background. I wouldn't say that I was a person who resisted all manner of control. Maybe a little bit in my mind, but generally, I tried to live my life in peace. Or some of you might have a child that is resistant to control. And so in that case, I think there's some children that we have that come to us and we're very close. And there are some children that come through us. And those children that come through, THROUGH, through us, are the ones that tend to be free spirits and the ones that already came here with a very strong will. And we have to be very careful not to break that will while we are establishing boundaries with them so that we don't break that beautiful spirit that they came here with. Okay, so allow them to be sovereign, point them in the direct direction that is the best for them, explain it to them with love, and then let them go and experience what they will, okay? So I had a lot of freedoms when I was younger, and those freedoms I might have just taken on my own, like when the family a lot of times was going to church in the summer. I didn't want to go. I would leave the house very early and get on my bike and just, ride around and, go hide in one of the fields. There are a lot of farms around there. And I would just stay at my friend's house or just go in the woods and explore nature. And so that was freedom for me. Freedom is not my born name. Freedom is a name that I chose as my sovereign appellation. Even prior to that, I used the name or the appellation of freedom in my artistic life when I was performing with my guitar. You might see it back there in public and doing open mic, which I hope to do again soon. So being sovereign, first and foremost, starts within your mind. And of course, your mind is your thinking apparatus, but it's not you. It's a function of the mind that allows us to think and our thoughts to be connected to what is happening in the real world, okay? And the spirit is the part that is outside of everything and inside of everything, because spirit is the essence of who and what God is, because God is everything and manifests in and through everything, even you and me, you and I. Okay, so the Bible uses the Holy Spirit and the word breath interchangeably. When you look up those two words in Hebrew and in the Greek, it says that it means spirit. So it's the Spirit of God, and I always, in my mind, will relate it to the Genesis story where Adam was fully created and I got an A on this paper in Bible college, and I wrote that when Adam was fully created by God the Father and God the Son, he just was on the ground, fully created from sand, and whatever. They said they made him in his. God said in Scripture, it says in Scripture that he was made after the image and likeness of God, capital God. So I wrote in that paper, and to this day I stick by it. Is in God's, the Most High, outward image and in His inward image that man was created. Reverse that if it makes more sense to you. So in His image and in His likeness, I grew up believing that was how and who we are as gods, as Scripture says that we are in the book of Psalms. Okay, so some of us, this instinct is natural, and we are born with that instinct, and it always resists all manner of control. When you make a decision to become sovereign and to do a status correction, it's a really big decision and a really big deal that should be deeply meaningful and celebrated in the same way that we celebrate a college graduation or a baptism, and those were things that were really big to me. Because when you graduate college, it's something that you did from all of your hard work, or even high school, and it was something, high school is something that you didn't really have a choice, but college is something, that you choose for yourself, ideally. Some people don't. But we celebrate those things. And so when we make a decision to become sovereign, that means that we're going to let the world know, or that we're going to put it down on paper. We already are sovereign, okay? And whether or not you declare your status as a Moor, you're already a Moor by your nationality, meaning, and also where you come from, if your family line, by your blood, that is inherent in you, from the Moabites, from the Canaanites, from your complexion, from your matriarch. Okay, so and her family line. Okay, so when we declare our nationality, we are making a conscious decision to come out of the corporation, the United States corporation, which is a corporation. All right, it has an EIN number. You can look that up. It's on Dun & Bradstreet. Okay, so when the United States corporation was created in the United States of America, there were already Moors, meaning people of color, living in this territory of the United States. Moorish Americans. It was spelled at that time Moors. The oldest dictionary that I have describes them, the word Moors, as copper-colored indigenous people of all lands. Okay, so that is why I decided to become sovereign, because I learned that about me. I didn't know. I was always considered a black woman or a Negro, and it felt, in a sense, that even being those things was a derogatory term when we were primarily growing up in a white town and going to all white schools. Even though I know today that those terms are reversed and that we are really white according to Black's law and according to lawful definition. And the ones that we considered today to be white or pale skin are really black. Okay, so everything is opposite of the way that we was taught that it is to be. In order to stay focused with this conversation that I'm having with you, I'm going to continue to move right along, okay? So you are creating a new reality for your life and for your family when you make the decision to become sovereign, okay? And it is a very powerful decision. It means that you have decided that you want it to be the supreme power and authority over yourself, okay? And hooray. Now, when you make that decision, what does it mean? How does it mean that you're going to behave? No, I don't have to do this. I'm sovereign. I can do whatever I want to. That's very immature behavior. And we know that sovereigns do not act immature. We start with our own character. We learn when you come into this Moorish American organization, for lack of a better word, when you declare your nationality, we are taught that they also, have core beliefs or core characteristics, which are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Okay, so whenever you want to know if you're living up to that measurement or living according to what your sovereignty or decision to be a Moorish American ask of you or from you, you make sure that you understand the words love, truth, freedom, and justice. And so for me, it was an easy transition because my 5 core pathways were already so much in harmony with what the Moors had stated. It was an easy transition, all but one, love. My spiritual, emotional, religious, financial, and physical freedom, encompass all of or those things, maybe not exactly spoken, but I was already on the right path, So you were creating a new reality for your life and future, and that's just the beginning. We all have character work to do as we are just babies, like reborn, like in baptism. So when you're baptized in the Christian world, you already, so to speak, belong to God, are a child of the Most High, and the essence of who we really are as human beings, hue, meaning ruddy, right, with blood, being, right? Even though we forget that we're humans, being a ruddy or a physical being and a spiritual being united, and sometimes become overly active, with the doing instead of being part. Okay, so when you can just really think of the words that you're proclaiming in your life and really break them down, and just contemplating that thought really made a difference in my existence. Am I a human doing or am I a human being? When I am a human being, I am at peace. When I am a human doer, I am not at peace. That means I am just so busy functioning, trying to get things done, caught up in the rat race of life and or my own business, excuse me. And it becomes stressful after a while if you do that too long without staying connected to the things that make you who you are. Like for me, it's music, getting out, participating in events that I can perform in, or even focusing on my main goal, which is life coaching, public speaking, selling my books. This one that I just showed you, and this is my second book, which is Love and Law. And I hope you can see it good, but it is understanding the love of God through nature. And it talks about what and how we would live if we never knew that there was if there were no holy books, right? If there were no religions, how would we know that there was a God? And so that book walks you through that process into understanding what that might look like and how you may have already garnered some of that without even knowing. Okay, so when you change your nationality, when you make a decision to be sovereign, then you have made a big decision for yourself. Okay, and the things that used to matter to you have changed. The way that you look at life and yourself has changed. But most of all, you've begun making decisions about yourself and for yourself outside of traditional norms. Okay, so the only opinion that should matter at this point is your own, right? As you begin to learn and you make a decision for the reasons that you do. I personally, heard some things and felt that something was off my whole life, but when I began to study, how this whole journey began for me was reading, when I revisited the Bible after allowing it to gather much dust, in my quest for understanding truth for my own being. I went on a God quest, and I wanted to find out what my soul identified with as God, and what I was going to choose and live out for myself. And so I was already acting for myself as a sovereign being. However, external sources in our life can really create a reality for you if you're not careful. And it starts within the structure of the school system and the church structures, and any place where our parents might take us to. They all have been taught under the same system and teach us that it's the same structure or the same government that we have to abide by. And the governmental systems, they just trickle down from the big so-called government that was here, or created, by the United States corporation. Even though we had our own established government before they came, but there was really more peace, serenity, in our existence than before we allowed the Albions to come. And we'll talk more about that later. Okay, so I don't want to get off track. The belief system is the biggest thing that binds our choices and makes us believe that we need to do things the way our family and friends do, or the way our family and friends did, or the way we were taught in school and in our religions. And a lot of you have parents and family members that will try and force that on you, won't speak to you if you're not doing things in that way, and so it can be very difficult, to live in an environment, in a home that's forcing you to behave in a certain way and force some beliefs on you that you haven't even been mature enough yet to think through for yourself and to own or disown, on your own. So now that you and I are adults and have found enough internal grit to make such big decisions for yourself, it's a really big deal, right? And I want to commend everyone that has done it. So sometimes, like I said, you have children that are strong-willed and have the idea that they can govern themselves and not listen to you. I have one of my daughters who was younger than my 5 children altogether. And at some point in her life, I was home with her for a little while, out of work, and she was so free-spirited, and still is. And she would go outside by herself when I would take a nap, and I would be like, how did she get that big door open? It was a sliding glass door, and I would constantly be awakened by my neighbor bringing her back home. So this went on for the whole summer pretty much, and one day I was walking with her to pick up one of her siblings from school. They had half a day. And when I was holding her hand, everyone in the neighborhood knew who she was, and they were saying, hi, calling out her name, hi. And she was just waving back, like, doing the little Miss America wave. Like, they'll say, how are you? And she would say, good, and you? Or, and I was just like, who is this that I have on my arm? And so as she got older, I realized that some children come to us, and some children come through us. I also know that I was one of those children or beings that came through my family and not necessarily to them. And you know that because of a child like that is very difficult to embrace. I have 2 of them actually that came through me and not to me, even though I know they're my child and I know that they know that I am their mother. Or the person that brought them through my vaginal portal, the matriarch of who they call us, or how they call us in this establishment today. So we are, and I wanted to go back and say, so, and I use that relative term, baptism in church, as a correlation between making a decision to become a Moor and making that public. Okay, so for that was a thing that you do in the church system. You decide to get baptized, and you get baptized into a specific religion, like we do a specific um, body, which we Moorish American, or you can be a Moorish American national, or a national, or an alien, a foreign status, or whatever. There's so many different choices. But the point is that you're making a public declaration, to let the world know that you're a Moor, which is obvious by your skin. You just didn't know. So you're putting it on paper and pencil and or pen, right? And then you're filing it in the public so that those who need to know, who have been governing over you, as they didn't know that you knew, but now that they know that you know that you are of age to make that decision, and you are no longer a child. Okay, so for some reason I wanted to bring up this book, Condemned to Repeat It, and it stresses that if I don't learn from the past, if we don't learn from the past, that we are doomed to repeat it. Okay, so keep that in mind as we continue this talk. Okay, so when we look at history and we see how when the Moors were here and Christopher Columbus, quote unquote, and the ship that was sent over from England came over and took over the land and claimed that they discovered it, there were already Moorish Americans, or people of color, Aboriginal and Indigenous people here on the land. All right, and so they were allowed to set up a government, but it was supposed to be only for them and their people who were of their race or nationality. It was not supposed to be over us, but over time we got lulled to sleep, So when it came to them offering to do things for us, and we were happy to let go of those responsibilities, and then sooner or later, over time, with trickery and spell casting through the English language spelling, they were doing paperwork for us. Then they started doing things like using the birth certificate, and I guess we're imagining, like, if that you had a house. I'm trying to imagine that you had a housekeeper, right? And well, let me just use one of my own examples. I had a child care giver and I was working, right? And I would come home from work and the furniture would be all in a different place, you know. And I've had people in my life would just come in and, start, we're going to stay for a while or just help out for a little while. And we'd just start moving all my furniture around, taking stuff out of the refrigerator and throwing it away, deciding that something I shouldn't be eating or shouldn't be there. So you have to learn when to put your foot down and say, no, this is my house and this is a decision that I'm going to make. All right, so when you become sovereign, you have to remember where is your territory and where it is that you draw the lines, and know when something is going to affect you within those parameters of the decision that you made to be free. All right, so again, there's a book I have. It's called Condemned to Repeat It. And it stresses that if you don't learn from the past, that you're doomed to repeat it. I actually bought the book, even though I got the message, but I never could read it because I got everything that I needed to know just from the title itself. So when it comes to brainwashing, what is the belief behind its occurrence for you and for others that you may know? And again, I said I struggled with naming this. How do you know if you're being brainwashed? So you can look at it in both senses. And or, how do you know if you're really sovereign? And I guess the thing that really made me start asking these questions is because I was feeling uncomfortable, as I had been in some groups and in some group studies, and some of the influencers or so-called leaders or heads of these Moorish American groups, specifically Moorish American groups, were very strong-willed and were forming something, and they were efforting to get Moors to join. Many did. Okay, so I did join a couple of organizations, but it didn't last very long. Mostly because I didn't. I was more like an observer, and I still am, and a watcher. So I would observe and watch. I would observe and watch everything that was being said, how people were interpreting what was being said, and what they were doing because of what they were hearing. So instead of thinking things through, they would make decisions, and sometimes those decisions backfired on them, and they would end up blaming the leader of the group for their outcomes, right? But we all have the ability to think and reason. And the things that you're being taught, right, you should be running that through your own filters because you have studied for yourself, because you have a relationship spirit, right? Because you are a spiritual being, all right? And if you come into this world as if you come into this movement as a Moor, you should be prepared to study, or else you're not going to be anything more than a glorified Moor on paper. It's no really heart transformation, but just really belonging to a group that you don't really understand, right? And so when you really study for yourself, right, and you make it your first and foremost priority, even those groups that you find yourself in, you're going to continue to study for yourself, all right? Man, so now, I guess there's a question that I skipped over. Okay, so when it comes to brainwashing, what is the belief behind this occurrence for you and or for others that you may know? Okay, so when it comes to brainwashing, I would say it would be a feeling of inadequacy, all right? And why would you feel inadequate? And see, this is the way you have to think. Well, you don't have to. This is the way that you would think if you wanted to figure out something. Am I feeling this way? Why? Why am I feeling, and you recognize that you're feeling a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. And that is when you have to get quiet and go inside and ask yourself questions. And identify, what is it that I'm feeling? Okay, I'm feeling inadequate. All right, why? Right? You don't have enough faith in yourself. And that causes you to feel inadequate. Right? All right, so the reasons why I can say in whole or in part is because you haven't done enough studying on your own. We get in these groups, and we get in these groups because we feel like it's going to help us accelerate at some faster pace. But when we get in these groups, we're learning what they're showing you in an hour, but they may have studied, the topic for months. 3 to 6 months before they're sharing it with you, and they can't give you all of that in just an hour or two. Then you have people asking questions. You might stop and eat, and you might get for free some material, and you might take it home and fill it out and send it in thinking, oh man, that was great, I got all this information, I'm going to go home and do it right away. And most people do that without even studying it. Okay, when I did my Moorish American name change declaration and proclamation, there's two documents. One is the declaration is, I believe, is the one that's like 7 or 8 pages, and then there's a 2-page one, judicial notice and demand, which is for the public, and that's 2 pages long. Okay, so one is for you, personal. I studied every single code, every single statute, every single reference, and it took months. My consort and I did that together before we made a decision to become a Moor. And so I didn't have to depend on what the paper was saying or worry later that I was going to come back and hear something that I don't agree with and have already signed or autographed that document. I wish I was that thorough all the time, in my life, in my adult life, and then I wouldn't have made some of the decisions as far as contracts that I made, right? So, but today, yeah, that would be something that I look at in a totally different way, right? Having had some ouches, that hurt, and learning my lessons from moving too quickly, spending too much money, spending thousands of dollars, joining groups, joining websites, and then when you have a question, you can't get an answer, and you spend $1,000 or $200, and in the moment, like after you learn that, and they're like, well, can you give us a response? And you're like, oh man, yeah, it was really good, man. I learned a lot. But when the class is over and you go to put those things in action, you're like, wait a minute. You go back, you look at your notes, you go back and you listen, you're like, I still don't know how to do this, And it's very frustrating. I know when I went to Bible college and they had me do that on the last day of class, how did you like this? It was a 2-year full-time at night, once a week, 4-hour class that was considered full-time that I went for my Bible college degree. And man, I was so happy to get that over with because I had children, young children at home, and I was single parenting, and it was very difficult to get through that alone, okay? So, yeah, I was happy. I was happy to get it over with. I thought, oh, I learned Greek and Hebrew. No, I didn't. Alpha, beta, whatever. That's probably all I can say today. Omega, just a few. But I didn't really learn it. I didn't really learn it. I just studied for a test and passed it. And like most of us do, we get information, we read it, we remember the definitions, and then we pass the test, okay? So sometimes people are just not good at interpreting what they're reading, all right? And there might be some dyslexia going on, but a lot of times when that happens, it's because we haven't really read or studied anything like in the way that is required when you start looking at those Moorish American documents, man. Those can be intimidating to someone who doesn't normally like to read. Okay, but if you're going to be a Moor and you're going to change your nationality and you're going to start living it out, it would behoove you to do so, to spend some time and not go past any word that you don't understand. And if you look up every law and code, it would behoove you to take some time and look it up. Write down the definition. And if you have to do it more than once, then you do it more than once. You do it. And then it makes you more self-sufficient, more honorable, more knowledgeable, and more knowing, okay? More knowing. You'll be able to know, why, and voice it, and live it out, because you understand, okay? So the reason why we feel inadequate around people who are smarter than us is because they've done their work. They've done the things that I'm saying to you. And when you do those things, then you have more faith in yourself. Some of you really might not be a good reader. Well, get with somebody who is. Get a good dictionary. Learn how to pronounce the word. Look up the word. There's no excuse. You can learn so much online today. You can go to a library. You can get a dictionary, a thesaurus. So now, what is the opposite of being sovereign? What is the opposite of being sovereign? What is the opposite? Right? So, one thing that we all have is called our intuition, right? So we have our intuition, and our intuition is our inner guide, and it leads and guides us into all our good. Now, I thought about this a lot before I started teaching this, and I talk about it a lot in this book on intuition, this book here, and this whole chapter on beliefs, right? So I was going to read this story, but it's going to take too long. But it just does say that there's a danger in belief, right? And it says that belief, and it comes from Osho, OSHO. Belief has nothing to do with truth. You can believe that it is night, but just because you are believing it, it is not going to become night. You exist within a hallucination. There is this danger in belief. It makes you think you know the truth. Because it makes you feel you know the truth, this becomes the greatest obstacle in the search. It becomes the greatest obstacle in the search. Believe or disbelieve, and you are blocked. Because disbelief is also nothing. Disbelief is also nothing but belief in a negative appearance. The believer believes it is so. The non-believer believes it is not so. But they're both they're both operating from belief. So they both have already established their belief without taking the trouble to go and discover the truth. The stronger their belief, the greater is their barrier. Barrier, B-A-R-R-I-E-R. So they will never go on a pilgrimage. There is no point. They will live surrounded by their own illusion of self-created, self-sustained illusions. They will live surrounded by their own illusion, self-created and self-sustained. It may be consoling, but it is not liberating. And then he closes that thought with millions are wasting their lives in belief and disbelief. Okay. So this is a very good chapter, and that is just the opening of it. And then you go on, and I really recommend that you read this book. It's my first work, and it's a lot of very elemental, fundamental, core things there. So belief and knowing. Okay, so we have to learn that we have something called intuition. Intuition is what I refer to as the voice of spirit. So when God the Father and God the Son, according to the Genesis theory, which is the one that I grew up believing most of my life, right? And I have to use that word because I don't know for a fact because I wasn't there. That's how I was taught. That Adam was fully created and he laid on the ground and they stood there, God the Father, God the Son, and admired their creation. But man was not alive until the Spirit of God was breathed into his nostrils. All right, and I say spirit, but it was breath that it says in Scripture. But when you study the word breath and spirit in the Old and New Testament, and you go back to their Greek and Hebrew, it always means breath. Breath always means spirit, okay? So when God the Father created man, according to this Genesis story, he breathed into him his spirit, and he became a living being. So I was sharing with someone that story recently, and Empress Light and I reconnected about a month ago, now from the time I wrote this, about 6 weeks ago. And I was sharing with her how I was driving, and Spirit told me to come and visit her, and for whatever reason, I wasn't sure. And so, I shared that with her. And I know that she has read my book in the past, and sometimes she would, quote back to me things that I had written on my own self. And so that was kind of funny, because sometimes I would go back and read it myself, and and I would need to hear whatever it was that I was rereading, And I remembered sharing with her what I'm going to share with you, and I was saying that God doesn't have any grandchildren, that we can go to him directly on our own, right? So we are when we learn how to listen to spirit, right? It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, right? This is where we're going to be able to face the giants that are out there, right? Trying to brainwash us for their own intents and purposes, or those leaders, group leaders, whatever they want to be called, chieftains, wazirs, whatever, organizations, Moorish American organizations, or any other organization. All right, I'm not picking on just one. All right, I've been connected with more than one, and I was thinking recently how they had a lot of similarities. Okay, so listening to my spirit is something that I practiced for a long time, and I describe it in detail in this book I just showed you, Fart in the Wind, Getting Rid of Emotional Flatulence. Okay, so it is something that really changed my life, and so I have to take pause here when I'm trying to explain it to you or share with you, how this really works. All right. So when we are taught in school and in church, we have a physical being, and even in these groups that I'm talking about today, look at people like Chris Hauser, I don't know, other teachers that are on the internet and popular right now. Chris Hauser is the one I'll use, and I don't know, some other people that are out there. My friend Light, what's his name, Eric. I mean, there's a lot of them out, and I noticed that a new one comes, and then another one fades out for whatever reason. A lot of times it's because people try their processes and it doesn't work for them, and then they end up in trouble, losing their house, their cars. That happened to me. I lost a vehicle, and afterward, it hurt. I really loved that Cadillac, and it really it stung because there was so much going on this summer. And I was advised in the group to go ahead and just get it the normal way and then take care of it on the other side. Well, when I went to go do it the normal way, quote unquote, it was because I really needed a new vehicle. My transmission was going in the car that I had since 2014. And so we decided to go ahead and trade it in, get it the normal way, and discharge it on the other side. When we went to actually do it, my spirit was saying no, 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 but my consort and I had looked at this vehicle before, and we loved it a lot. I don't mean actually LOVE did, but we really liked it a lot. And so after some debating, we ended up going ahead and doing the process for it. All right. So in that moment, my spirit was speaking to me, and I felt like it was a wrong decision. We argued all the way home. That car was a pain in the butt from its genesis. We talked about if we were going to do it, how we were going to autograph the paperwork, and something in him was making him be in opposition to what I was saying. He didn't listen. He didn't sign it, protecting his rights. And then so we had the vehicle home, and they kept calling us because they wanted the numbers on the back of our social security card. And I was just like, no one's ever asked me for that before. So finally, after about 6 days, we had the vehicle home, and I went ahead and talked with my consort about it. And so we decided that we didn't want to have to go through this again. We had traded in our vehicle that we had previously that we could have had fixed, right? We traded it in and put a down payment in fiat. So here in the story, you can hear so many things wrong. Every single thing that I was doing was going against my spirit. But I was taught, as a good Christian woman, that I was supposed to listen to my consort. And I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying for myself, I take responsibility because I wasn't listening to my spirit, and I should have at that point got up and left, irregardless of what I was advised to do, right? I got to drive this vehicle 3 times before they came and took it. I was in the hospital twice this summer. I had a thyroid storm where my thyroid stopped working. My doctor refused to give me medication. And I do think there's a lot of that in this territory, or in general, going around, because the Moors have done eminent domain lien on the whole world. A lot of you who are Moors might not even know, some of the paperwork that has been filed for all Moors. There's a whole bunch of documentation out there that I would advise you to go look at, and know that it is supposed to apply to you too, and to whether or not you are in actual harmony, with these documents. Some of them I wasn't in harmony with early on. I didn't really understand, when it came to the trust, the Moorish American Trust, how everything would go back to the Moors if our children or descendants were not nationalized, instead of, maybe leaving a clause in there that they can't inherit until or unless they do nationalize, but that it would go to the Moors. And that really sent up some warning signals, I guess, because I had heard so many stories about older women who passed away and, left everything to the Catholic Church, and their family didn't get anything, So think about how long it took you to wake up, and how we as a people in generally haven't been given anything, from our parents, because they didn't have anything to leave, most of them, There are some that are considered fortunate actors or whatever that earn a good income, and they can leave their children something besides debt, in a bill, But even so, that money is, if it's not lawful money, then it's just the same with no value in this current world that we're living in today. All right. So you have to learn how to listen to your spirit. Okay. So, and allow that when people are doing things, because there was a time when I joined a group and I was doing the same paperwork they were doing. But when it came time to file it, my spirit would not let me. So it sat on the table and I never moved it for a year or so. It sat on the same corner of that table, the same paperwork that they had filed. While I watched some of them go through the most horrible experiences with being pulled over, thrown incarcerated, etcetera. And the teacher of that class had been incarcerated many times themselves. And but some of the things, even to bring up another point, is that some of these things that they encourage you to do, they haven't tried themselves, So that's one thing you need to find out, What was your experience? What was it like? But the most important thing is to study it for yourself and to really listen to your spirit. And if your spirit is telling you it's okay to do it, then go ahead and do it. But the problem is most people don't know how to listen to their spirit, And so that's the most important thing that I want to get through in this message today. You can never be deceived when you are in spirit, when you are led and when you are guided by your inner spirit. Because the inner part of you is that breath, the same breath that I spoke of in the story of Adam, how he was created in him image and likeness of his Father, right? So if we are spirit, right, inwardly and outwardly we put on human flesh, right? Now, we can't interact with the world unless we have that breath, unless we have that spirit. And that spirit walks with us. A spirit is all intelligent, all right? And it's through the inner self, the inner, inside your flesh, through the chakras, through that layer of the ethers inside of us. That's the only way I can explain it. Chakras is probably a good word, but some of you guys have been taught to be afraid of that word. But they are allowing us to interact with the spirit that is outside of us, okay? So when the baby is born and the mother or the nurse smacks that child or newborn on his bottom and the whatever fluids, embryonic fluids come out, then the baby takes his first breath. The baby takes in spirit, right? And now it is alive on its own, what's the word I'm looking for? Of its own strength. But when the baby is in the womb, it's breathing from the mother. Okay, now when you look at it like this, why are we considered to be minors before we correct our statuses? Because we're breathing and we're living and depending on the mother, the one to feed us and to give us everything that we need to survive. But when we separate from the womb, when we declare our nationality and saying, okay, we are no longer that, we move out the house, so to speak, mentally, physically, emotionally, and we decide that we're going to start living on our own terms, okay? So now we are considered an age of maturity or an adult where we can go out there and say, I am ready to operate my own affairs. Thank you, Mother, very much. All right? That doesn't mean you can never go back to your mom or dad and ask for advice or whatever you need to do. You know, hang out with them, cry on their shoulder. You know, so I was going to read it from my book, but I don't want to take the time to look at it because I'm already probably over time. So we're going to try and get through the next pages a little more. So when you go back and watch this, I want you to really take time to look up these definitions, all right? So remember what we're talking about here is how to know if you are really sovereign. Look it up. See the definition of sovereign, which we already did. All right, now the next question I want to ask you to ask yourself is, what is the opposite of being sovereign? When I get finished, you'll probably see the reason why I had a hard time naming this, and I might have the subtitle, right? So the opposite is called government, because they or some other person or persons govern your ment or your mind. Government, your mental. They govern your mental. That's what governments do. They govern your mental. They tell you what to do. And where the mind goes, the body follows. So they are governing you, right? We cannot be sovereign when we are under a government. Whether it be a government, a more American government, or whether it be a capitalistic government, okay? The only government that you can be under that will allow you to stay sovereign is your own being. We cannot be sovereign when we are under government. Governments install their belief systems within your mind, within your thought systems. Why? What is their purpose and agenda? To limit your consciousness, keep you bound to a limited physical awareness and to a limited expectation for wealth and health. They typically want control over people, you and me, to use your power and resources, and want you, us, to be beholden to them. Okay? And this is what usually happens. Like, man, I remember when Chris Hauser started making videos on the 1099A, right? Everybody wanted to learn that process because we all had needs. We all wanted to get cars and houses and money, pay our debt, you know. Man, those videos caused the IRS to shut down for 6 months and nobody can get forms, okay? So he had all these kind of groups, and then finally he ended up going to jail, I watched the reason why they arrested him. I watched his court hearing on the internet. It was on the internet. Now, it wasn't because of that he was teaching what he was teaching, but it's because when he did his conditional acceptance, he put an enormous amount of on the indebtedness of the debtor. I think it was 6 million for things that the judge was saying was greatly out of proportion. When I did my first conditional acceptance, I followed his his document, but I didn't have a script. I had to listen to him read it and type it down as he was saying it. Of course, later I found it on Scribe. But anyhow, when I got to the point when I was going to put, how much for I was going for damages, my consulate and I talked about it, and I said, honey, well, I don't feel comfortable with this amount. And so we decided that we felt comfortable with a certain amount. I think it was $200,000 or $300,000, and so that's what we went with. Now, the irony in it all was that Chris Hauser wasn't the only one that went to jail for these conditional acceptances because of that reason. There were some other people that they took along with him, people that were studying underneath him for the same reason. Okay, so we have to remember that when we're doing these processes, that when you put something down, you feel entirely comfortable with it, that you studied what you're doing, you understand the process, that you've read the whole document, because all the documents that we use and all the documents that we autograph, including the Declaration and Judicial Name Change Proclamation, tell you everything you need to know in those documents. Though there is no excuse for ignorance. There is absolutely no excuse but laziness. Now, there's a scripture that says in the last days many will run to and fro, seeking here, seeking there, here a little, there a little. Knowledge will be increased, right? And there will be no stability, and there will be no success for these people who are doing this. Man, I did that for a little while, and it was crazy. I felt like I was like losing my mind, man. You can't have all these thoughts and 2 or 3 different or 6 different people that you're listening to, 3 or 4 classes that you go to, and then you try and merge all their teachings together, and not even think for yourself, and then blame them when the things don't go right. It takes 2 to make a thing go right, but it only takes 1 to make it go unright. Regardless of what somebody told you, if you are not opening those documents, even if you take a class, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you need to take those documents and break them up and make them your own. Because some of the documents that some of these Moors are teaching are in all black, they don't sign in red, they're more on the, I want to say government, quasi-government side than they are under common law, right? And they'll have you signing or autographing your Moorish American appellation as the accommodating party, right? And that wouldn't be adequate. So you have to know who you are. You have to understand what it is that your status allows you to do and be, and that when you do those documents, that even if they are not structured in that way, that you have a right to structure them in that way. Put the headings up there that make you stay in your proper status, and then change the wording around. Just use the content as a guide, to figure out what it is that you want to accomplish, right? So if you don't even know that, you should be doing that with those documents. You shouldn't be doing the documents. All right, so this is your own consciousness, right, being limited. All right, and so some of these classes are like 2 hours, and then they'll spend another hour and a half. Some of them are getting testimony, some of them are teaching. A lot of it is question and answers afterwards. Or another thing I noticed that in some of these groups that form together, were creating governments and governmental head. Man, one of them I was on so long, and it was similar to them giving honor to different organization heads of the organization. Now, you'll be in church. Giving honor to sister so-and-so, for doing this, Y, and Z. Man, I was invited to a group one time, and they did that for like a half an hour. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I was a child, in the church that we grew up in, and there was testimony time. But before the church can even start, there was so much giving honor to people, persons, people, that wore hats, high hats, and fancy clothes, that we couldn't get to the core of the meeting or why we are there. And now there's always a system that they want you to be obedient to. Now, a lot of you are submitting yourself to some of these organizations that are saying, I am your government. I am the leader of the Moors. And they're not specifying just that body or group, but their documents are specifying the whole body of Moors. They're speaking for the whole body of Moors. And some of the documents I have studied and read for myself say, well, even when we get to the point where we're being governed, or we are governing the whole world under our universal command, that we're going to even force Moors to bring all of their gold and silver into the storehouse. I'm sorry, that just can't happen to me. Okay? Now, if you are doing this, shame on you, right? If you are adhering to it, shame on you. Because this is a day and this is a time, and this is just my opinion. I could be wrong. All right? There are some people who are always going to need to be governed because they just can't seem to understand stuff. Anyways, that's what they led themselves to believe, because they won't take out the time to study. And when you do, and you find somebody who is willing to be patient with you and break down the words and help you through a thing, help them grow up. Teach them how to study. One of the things that you have to do is never go past a word that you don't understand. Learn how to pronounce it. Learn how to break it down, like we did up here. Government, all right? I looked up that word, government, right? Before I put it here, I'm not going to go break it down. Let that be your homework. Look up the word government in Black's Law. Break it down. Look at it in a regular dictionary, in a thesaurus, whatever it means that you have, and then put them all together and see what you come up with. A lot of times the words that you find in Black's Law and in a Webster's dictionary would be in so much opposition, The other one gives you power and the other one takes it away. I'll let you guess which one that is. So a government, things are called a government. People are stating that they are the government, right? And so what is happening, what that actual word means is government is to govern your mental, right? Now, a true leader, like Martin Luther King, that really, I can't tell you everything that he stood for. I wasn't there, right? But what I do remember and what I feel in my heart, that if I was going to start something like that, it would be for the sake of us coming together to study, all right? And then not to just come and have 100, 500 people following me, and then I have studied this content for a week or two, and then I share it with them, and they're like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. Oh, yeah, I vote for that. That's crazy, because it took you God knows how long, to study it, right? And them and their little, fish biting selves, like you're throwing the fish pole in, and they're like little guppies eating up everything you say, huh? Because they won't go and study for themselves. So in some aspects, I know they're going to get what they deserve for doing that. But I know it's going to hurt, huh? Because it hurt when it happened to me, and I was in the hospital, right? 2 days in, my consort's brother died. I came out. I had thyroid storm. The doctor wouldn't give me the medicine. That's why I was taking thyroid medicine since I was 28. She simply refused. So for 20 days, I went uh, without medication. And so when I did find another doctor in that same venue, he put me back on the lower dose, which was too low, and he told me to come back in 6 weeks. And within 6 weeks of that time, when I would have had to go back to, I ended up in the hospital, right? My whole body pretty much shut down. The part of me that was spared was my spirit. I couldn't move my physical body. And the only thing that I could do is pray, affirm, and make affirmations. And then my first prayer was, Father, Spirit, God, please don't let me be stupid because I don't want to go to the hospital. Who does? I mean, really. Let me know when I get to the point where I need to go. And when I did, I went. Okay. So to keep you bound, why? Why do they have a government? They want to install their beliefs within you, limit your consciousness, all right, to keep you bound to a limited physical awareness and to limited expectations for wealth and health. They typically want control over you and me to use your power and resources and want us to be beholden to them, right? And this is not even a difficult thing for them to do. I mean, I can do it if I wanted to. I could. It's not hard. All you got to do is go and tell people stuff, stay up all night, and then get them to agree with you, and then tell them after a while, let them build their trust, let them vote on something that they've heard for the first time in their life because they trust you, because they trust you. Now, I'm not going to say that nobody else in these groups are studying, but it's primarily because they trust the leaders, and they emulate them, and they look up to them, that they do these things, all right? Now, there's so much I want to say, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because maybe they don't even know that what they're doing is brainwashing. In my book, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. If I am wrong, I apologize. But I've been through too many, and I start seeing the same thing, right? It's the same thing, the same control. Start feeling the put downs, the negative expressions when you start showing that you're not going to give in, to their some of the things that they try to get you to do and to believe, right? So how do they do this in general, in my experience, has been by controlling your thoughts, your time and your energy and your financial resources. So number one, which were A, that will try to make you feel as though you are ignorant when you express your own opinions at some point, usually in a private setting. They're otherwise very charismatic, okay? So, and they'll spend hours with you on the phone. Now, and they'll be just, telling you whatever they want to tell you, listen to what you have to say. And a lot of us are so trusting that we'll start sharing personal things that we're going through, and then they'll give you your opinions, and in that setting or in the group meetings that they have, and to lead you to believe that they're your own opinions by giving you a chance to vote. Well, even in the world of, the systems that we live in before we declare a nationality, they send you pamphlets in the mail like 2 weeks or a month before it's time to vote. So you can consider the people that are running, the persons, and you can consider what it is that they say they stand for and what they're going to do, all right? They don't just say, oh, it's time to vote, and on that same day, give you a 15 or 20-minute dissertation, what this person is about, and expect you to make a clear, conscious decision in that moment. So they give you their opinions, and you think that they're yours. They lead you to believe that they are your opinions. They know that most of us don't even know how to read or study for ourselves, or are too busy running here and there for information instead of learning and listening to their own inner wisdom, to their own inner teachings, okay? So again, this is a very, very, very well-covered topic in this book here, and I urge you to read it, because this book is written so that no matter where you are on your spiritual journey, that it's going to deepen that walk, and if you were asleep to any degree, when you read this book, you will no longer be. Because there are levels, of our growth, and there are times when I have to revisit it myself. I was a chronic meditator and, a do-gooder at one point. It's like I walked on air. I was so, spiritual and so close to God, and then one day I decided I didn't have to continue meditating because I was in a meditative state all the time. I was always in peace. And a family member asked me like, well, what about everything around you that's not, in peace? How do you feel about that? I said, well, I don't know. I just know that I'm in so much peace. When people came to my home, they were like, this is such a peaceful place. And it stayed that way for some time, So I stopped reading my Bible. I just really relished in that existence. And then I heard something that emanated my beliefs that I grew up with about the end times. And then the thought came in my mind, oh no, that's what the Bible says is going to happen. What if I'm on the wrong side? What if I'm on the wrong team? And so I got scared. I stopped trusting myself. I started doubting, and fear came over me, and so I went and started studying the Bible again. And then I was torn between two completely, not completely, but there's that content in there that tells you that you are free and that we should be free, right? In God, right? That we are God's. And there's so many coming to my mind that I'm trying to think of scripture, But and then there's the actual reality of heaven in Him experience, where we know that we are our own teachers, where we know that we are being led in all of our decisions by the Spirit of God. Like I said, God doesn't have any grandchildren. I don't have any problem telling you that I've heard that on the radio when I was like 19 years old back in Connecticut. All right, and the pastor said we can go to Him directly on our own, and so this is how we get the answers. All right, but the part that's missing, that I heard someone share from my book, is that it takes time to develop that. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes time to develop that relationship, and so I shared in my book how I did that. In small increments with small things, and then when those manifestations came into being through my thoughts, through my patterns, through my understanding how the universe is our servant, and that how it responds to our thoughts. Each one of us, we think our thoughts, our desires, and our wants into it, and that it gives us back what it is that we are speaking into it. Like we plant a seed in the ground, right? And our thoughts become things, right? And we should actually be so impregnated with a desire that when we plant that seed, and that seed goes into the ground, it becomes impregnated. And so when we become impregnated, I mean so full of belief, and even take that word and throw it away, and so fully knowing that this is the truth of our being, that we are one with all that God has put in for us. I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, right? Even as thy soul prospereth. So those things you seek first, the kingdom of God, right? And then when you seek the kingdom of God first, and it becomes infused in you and a part of you, which takes a process of time, then all other things will be added unto you, even so as your soul continues to prosper. Not even a rich man is just going to come and dump all of his gifts that he has for you on you all at one time, because he knows that you cannot handle it. So that is wisdom, right? And they didn't get famous and rich by doing stupid things. You know, only poor people think that they can get, millions of dollars for doing nothing. You know, um, or just go up there and 1099A, and don't even know what to do with the money when you get it, walking around, flashing stuff around. I apologize if I'm taking too long with this video. So anyway, let me go back. So they'll try to make you feel as though you are ignorant when you express your opinions at some point, usually in a private setting, and they're otherwise very charismatic. Now, I can only tell you this because I've been in that situation. Why? Because I was at a place in my life, experiential growth, wavering back and forth from religion to spirituality, where I just kept getting confused. Because when I was in the spiritual side, I was very full of faith and believing. But when I went back on the religious side, I would have fear enter me, fearful, and become fearful. And there was always that constant battle. And then it made me feel insecure. And then I started carrying negative emotions. Because when you open the door to one negative emotion, they bring the whole family. And before you know it, just like you're under constant combat in the mental. They govern your mental. Right? So you have to choose which side you're going to be on, right? If you're going to allow spirit to guide you, or you're going to allow man to guide you, right? And when you allow spirit to guide you, I'm talking about God, the God in you, the spirit that is God that's infused in everything. Because everything that exists has the element of God, which is wisdom, right? Or the spirit, right? And the wisdom part of that is the female aspect according to scripture. All right. Now, of course, there's other stories out there that we're not going to elaborate on right now. But if we just stick to those basics, we'll be doing well, to know. All right. So when you look at these characteristics, hopefully you'll be able to relate it to some point in your life, or maybe even right now, that you're having one of these experiences, if you're having it right now. All right. So in the very charismatic people, right? Individuals that always would be so kind and loving and patient with you. But over time, when they start getting frustrated that you're not getting it fast enough, or, you shared something with them that was personal, then they'll think, they'll start using those things against you. They'll start giving you their opinions, and even when you don't want it and you don't ask for it, and they know that we are not studying for ourselves. So you need to read and study for ourselves. We can't be too busy, and we can't take their information and listen to their voice instead of our own inner wisdom and our own inner teachers. They will say they didn't say things that way that you said it when you bring it up at a later date. They can manipulate you your whole life or for a time until you wake up. Sometimes people lose their whole selves, they lose their assets, they lose their money, their houses, their cars, because they didn't wake up in time. And some of these people haven't even done, these things that they have you doing. And I know that for a fact. All right, so they manipulate through your mind and emotions right here. I have to change that. Okay, so they want to instill their will and desire and their programming in you to get you to do their will. All right. Some of them want to run the country. Some of them want to run an organization. Some of them want to take all your money and say it's for one purpose when they're hoarding it, what appears to be, for the tribe. But when the tribe gets kicked out of their house, right, and needs assistance, they're not going to get no assistance from that same source, right? That's supposed to be gathering it, to run a government. So be very leery. I mean, today is not the time to be giving away your assets. You're going to need everything that you can in the days to come. Many of you will be out there following this one and that one, trying one or more technique today and another one tomorrow, and even trying to mix and match them together or make sense of one piece of paper and one thought, right? I'm trying to make sense on one piece of paper, in one thought, in one sentence that came from 3 or 4 different teachers that you listen to, with 2 or 3 different groups that you belong to, right? And then when you get confused, you want to call me, you know, and say, what do I do, Empress? What do I do? And I'm like, well, stop listening to so many teachers and listen to your inner self. They don't know how to do that because they haven't learned how to be quiet enough, to listen. They may have known in the past, but it's just too much, and so I just have to pull away and detach. And the last day scripture says again, many will be running to and fro, trying to find the truth here a little and there a little. Okay, so the last days, quote unquote, is a whole nother story, but the last era or the last time dispensation that we are in is what that is referring to. And so there's another whole age to go through and things that are going to change drastically in just a little while. So when you run around, like a little child, or like a person with schizophrenia, and I know people that have had it, and it makes them confused, and so when you run around like that, then you start to get really confused, and I don't want anybody to feel as though I'm making fun of anyone, because I felt like that myself. One of my daughters told me when they were studying in college, that when they looked up the word that my picture was in the book, I was so mad. But during that time in my life, I wasn't living from my spirit. I may have known how to, and that's the part even where I am at now, like reassessing where I am at spiritually. This time, this summer, like I said, was a very difficult time, but you can't get caught up in difficult times. You got to just keep moving on and know that those trials come to make us stronger. There's lessons to learn, and the trials that I'm going through today, right, are just the beginning of woes that we are going to be facing. So I am basically getting pre-baptized into the drama that lies ahead. Now, hopefully, and I am reorienting myself in spirit through prayer and meditation every day and throughout the day, me and my household, so that we can make it through this time in the right way. That we are governing our own mental. That's the first place you want to start, okay? So, you're going to be running around. You don't want to do that. You're not going to get anywhere. So what you have to do is just number 3, stop, detach, and that is from all of the programming and all of the programs. If you are really sovereign, you would really feel uncomfortable in these situations, and you would be awake and realize that something is really wrong and feels disturbing in some ways, but maybe you just can't name it. Maybe you just can't rightfully define it, and that's okay. Just listen to your feelings, because they come as your teachers to let you know that something is wrong. Right? So don't worry. Don't worry, I can. But maybe you still have to figure it out for yourself. Right? And so what I'm referring to is, you can't rightfully define it in the sentence above, but I can, and I'm telling you what it is. These are the things that you've been doing that when you correct them, then you'll be able to get back on the right path. First of all, decide that you're going to govern your own mental and know that it's all programming. Some of us, that's all we know how to do, and think that we're doing the right thing. Maybe they do too. I don't know. Some of them are so smart that I think they know what they're doing. Trying to prepare themselves financially, just like the government is out there. These big bankers are, who are making millions of dollars, but charging us, money, ridiculous amounts of money for things that, that are small. When I paid for my vehicle, I used the bill of exchange. They took the bill of exchange and took the car too and wouldn't give it back, you know. And so it's just been a learning lesson for me because there are things that, you know, I can look back now and see that I could have done differently without blaming anybody, you know. And so I'm not going to move again unless I know that I'm following my own spirit. When you're in a married situation, you still really have to listen to the one who is the most spiritual, pray about things together, and teach them, right? And teach them how to approach things in the right way. I heard Tosh 3 say a couple of weeks ago that we have to come from the treaty. You know, you can't declare your nationality and say that you are no longer a United States corporate citizen, which is under maritime law, right? And have Moorish American letterhead on top of all of your documents, right? And of course you can, you know, take some of the content and the idea behind them and make them say what it is that they need to say if you're trying to get a certain thing done. But, you know, all that House Joint Resolution stuff like that is all just to pay our debt. Anything else that you're trying to get is all extra. You know, so if you're trying to utilize it to learn how to buy something, those are all extra things that were not promised or stated that those processes are for. It's just for debt discharge. Okay, so if you find a way to do it outside of that, yay. But some of us, many of you have so far to go, me too, before you're able to learn those processes and implement them and maybe even get it like 75% right. So if you are fortunate, you might find somebody in the establishment that you go to that is seeing what's going on in the world and that's willing to work with you to help you, you know, learn how to, you know, get a, you know, a vehicle or a house using a bill of exchange or, you know, a 1099. I've seen so many tutorials on that. There's people that use the CPN. You know, there's things that I'm not willing to try. Um, but anyway, so just remember these things, right? That everybody that's out there teaching is not always there for your own good, right? Whether they be Moors or not Moors, right? It's all programming from governments that are seeking to govern your mental, you know, congresses and everyday people that and the like. Your cherished leaders. They are not necessarily always here for your good, but to fulfill their own agendas. They are entirely using people to serve them and to live out their agendas. Perhaps even you, Moors or Mers, there is a no N-O-O-O sovereignty in what they are doing. You've worked so hard to just get yourself sovereign. Don't let it get stolen away from you. And don't just give it away. So what you have to do is learn how to detach, right? And and unless you are wise enough, and until you are wise enough and are the one using or controlling your own programming, and how do you do that? Program yourself to study. Program yourself to learn. There are books on how to study. There are books on how to learn that I've seen people use in college, all right? And until you get to that point where you can even look up a definition of every word that in a document, that you can look up a word in Black's Law or on that other website, you're going to be making a lot of mistakes because you're not operating from an awake state. So you're not operating as a true sovereign. And this is how you can know if you are operating from true sovereignty. And if you're not, it's because you're lazy and you don't want to study, you haven't taken the time, you don't have confidence in yourself, all right? And in these groups, you're easily brainwashed, all right? And these are some of the characteristics that you can remember to look out for. Greatly absorb your time using great effort to instill in you their beliefs. They play the long game. They use their time and your time, hours at a time, to brainwash you. They use their energy and your energy, hours at a time, to brainwash you. You know, there was a wazir a couple years ago, and we got in it. Now, I was still studying. We were studying, but we weren't all the way there. And they had put together this group, and they wanted your finances, so people were like having their income sources directed into this one bank account that this one wazir uh, or prince, whatever, was heading, and people were losing their money. So during that time, we had the first and only time under that group that our mortgage was paid late. Other than that, we have been here for in this house for about 6 years. That's the only time. And so initially, as soon as we did that and saw that happen, we snatched ourselves right back out of that situation. Some others were not lucky and didn't get their money back that they put in that organization. Then there's people that would give me reports of being at their domicile, and they were living in a mansion, and while we're over here just trying to save up money, not me specifically, but over here to try and put up a little bit of extra food, and they'll say, oh, don't worry about that, you don't need to worry about that, we got it all under control. Yeah, I'm sure, but I'm going by primarily what I see happening in the world and what Scripture says, what I know about the end times, or the times that we're in right now, the end of this dispensation, and I don't want to be caught up in the system in that time. And that's why I'm going to start a series on trust. Not that, I have a lot of experience, but what I have done is what I have done this over the last year, and taken the trust that we had established and going back. And I heard someone when I was studying trust say, I think it was on the Fearless Floyd show, that once you operate from a trust, you don't have to worry about fiat. Now, fiat is what we call a dollar, greenback, Federal Reserve note, right? And so that was enough for me to start studying trust, and to create a trust. And it took me like almost a whole year to learn how to fund it and to operate from it. And I can't say I'm doing it, that I know everything, but what I do know, I will start sharing with you after this video is done. So let's see. You're the one who needs those gold coins right now. You're the one that needs your energy right now. All right. So just listen to what your spirit is telling you. If your spirit tells you, to stay in those groups, if I were you, I would just really ask yourself: is that the voice of fear that you're listening to? And ask yourself if you've really taken enough time to make such judgments for yourself and your family, and try and gather as much energy, information that you can. I meant to say entire information that you can, and give yourself a separation period. So if you give yourself a separation period from those governments, then you'll be able to start hearing your own voice, right? Because when they spend so much time teaching you, you hear their voice, and then you stop hearing your own voice. You have to always listen to your inner voice and let your own inner voice, which is your spirit, right? That is the same spirit that God is, the creator of the heavens and the universe, in us, in you. And he speaks to us and through me and to you through the voice of intuition. Intuition. Look that word up. That's your homework, okay? So You might already feel like you need a break from it. And you might already be questioning some of these things just a little bit. If you feel a constant voice in your head telling you to stop and telling you no, listen, that is your intuition trying to warn you, okay? So now at the same time, your thoughts would be, oh no, but they seem so kind. Oh, but they have been so giving of themselves. Or they have taught me so much, right? And all these things can be true. Like I said, I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I have no idea how that can be. Page 9 of 8, that's what it says. So I don't know where I'd be without them, you're thinking, right? They have to be good people. They must have my best interest at heart, right? And you're thinking all these things, right? But no, my people, they're energy vipers. They want your energy. They want your mind. They want your time and your money. And when they see they're not going to get it, they'll leave you alone. They have no use for you. You are a divine sovereign being. Be that. You are a human being, not a follower, right? Not a human doer. And in a state of being, you are at rest. In a state of being, you are at peace. In a state of divine sovereignty, as a sovereign being, you are in a state of harmony with yourself. You are in peace. And you came into this world alone, I want you to know. And most likely, you will leave alone. All right? And so, to be sovereign means to totally be self-governed. Right? To govern your own mental. Let that soak in for a minute. To govern your own affairs. And you then will have freed yourself. You might have had some painful experience already, but it'll be okay. You can recover. And you can find peace. Free yourself and you will be free and you will be sovereign. Take your sovereignty back right now. I want to share with you some words to before I go. An open mic piece that I wrote some years ago, and it's called "Your Deep Sleep." Okay, so deep sleep, deep sleep. And God caused Adam to go into a deep sleep and took a rib from his side. Some of us don't even know we've been pierced in the side, don't even know we're bleeding on the inside because our wounds are so steep. We're in a deep sleep, yeah. You know what I mean? We're in a deep sleep. Walking around, living your life, eating and drinking, no need to cry, you're in a deep sleep. There's a rib out your side, can you see it now? It's in the hands of the gods. You're in a deep sleep. Yeah. You've been rematized, you've been hypnotized, you've been lucidized. You've been rematized, you've been lucidized, you've been hypnotized. Some of you have just been asleep so long. Same dreams, they come, they gone. Ain't got no dreams, ain't got no hopes. You'd rather die. Some of you have just been asleep. Some of you been asleep so bloody long. Ain't got no hope, ain't got no dreams. You'd rather die than believe. Deja vu, the spell is on you. Deja vu. Deja vu, the spell is on you. Deja vu. You're in a deep, 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 deep sleep. You're in a deep, 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 deep sleep. You're in a deep, 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 deep sleep. You're in a deep, 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 deep sleep. You're in a deep, 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 deep sleep. You're in a deep, 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 deep sleep. You know what I mean? Let me tell you. Here's what you gotta do if you want to be revitalized. Open your eyes, dehypnotized, let the crust fall by your side. Open your eyes, dehypnotized, let the crust fall by your side. Open your eyes, dehypnotized, and let the crust fall by your side. Your life is hazy,